Good evening. It's 17 minutes past 7, as it always is on a Friday night, and you are tuned to the Friday Night Football Pitch with myself, Cameron McDonald, and the regular co-host down in the bottom right there, Dennis Newell. And we're joined by a couple of Dennis's colleagues tonight, Manchester United supporter and a Spurs supporter, obviously two different people. Tom House and Steve Hitchin, and we are going to be at some point in time talking about the Consolation Cup, which is the Europa League final between Manchester United and Spurs. But we'll leave that till later on, just in the off chance we get some listeners later on in the show and we can send them away nice and early once we start talking about that. We'll also be talking about Scottish football. What a show we've got lined up. Talking Celtic winning umpteen leagues, Rangers winning nothing, possibly the Rangers takeover, and the biggest joke of the week is Derek McInnes taking over at Kilmarnock. And we'll be discussing that as well. That's what I meant. Well, he's leaving Kilmarnock and taking over at Hearts. We will be discussing that and anything else that we can think about as the season draws to a close. So, Dennis, you've introduced yourself already. Tom, Steve, good evening to you. Thanks again for joining us.
Evening, no problem.
All right, guys. Tom, your sound's
Tom, you'll need to switch your mic on. Put that beard down. You've talked away earlier on, so we know it works.
No,
nothing.
It's off again, Tom.
Nothing again. No, you've went off again.
Showing it off our end.
Let's just talk about Tottenham then. That's fine.
I know.
Yeah, talk about Tottenham. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you go. That's you now. Yeah. That's you.
Yep.
Sorry, folks. We're going to talk Manchester United as well. But as I say, we'll come on to that later on, Dennis. We will talk Scottish football first of all, I think, tonight in terms of Celtic. We knew in December they'd already won the league, let's be fair. But it is official. Already won the league cup, looking as in all likelihood, the way they've played the other night against Aberdeen, that they're going to win another treble in terms of that Scottish Cup. Dennis, where do we go in Scottish football? Let's be brutally honest now, because it's not a product that we are selling. We're talking about league reconstruction. We're talking about how do we make it more attractive. We're talking about how do we get sponsors involved. Where do we go?
We could spend the whole hour discussing potential good things to make the product better. If it was a business, Scottish football, and you were there to generate cash as a company, you'd be down the toilet. It's as bad as that. The whole collective package needs revisited. And any time you throw up anything to restructure that is common sense for the ordinary punter to enjoy, it's discarded because the people in their ivory tower don't want to make life difficult for themselves or upset the apple cart. They have no vision. They've no vision for years. And I think it's historic that we seem to be employing people that don't have the vision to take the game forward. It's no more recent than about 6 weeks ago, maybe less, that a restructure proposal was suggested and they knocked it back. No even a qualm about it. Bang, forget it. Now, the product we've got is not bringing anything to the game. And as you rightly said, Celtic there is an example. It's not to bring Celtic down. It's to bring some more revenue into the game by making the product more, worth watching. I just don't think that the product's decent enough. I mean, there's a lot of good players in Scotland, but they're not consistent enough, right? So it's easy to just discard the players. The problem we've got is that you'll see them making a really good move and a couple of good passes, a couple of good shots, and then it just collapses, and the rest of the game's poor. Nobody seems to go from start to finish the way you can get English players or other parts of the world, from start to finish, and it's a consistent 90 minutes you get out of a player. We don't have that. And I think it's possibly because we don't have the finances to buy that type of player. And also what we're bringing in as well is we're bringing in players that clubs think they can just sell on, and it's an easy market for agents. So, I mean, the tip of the iceberg is really just looking at the whole thing and seeing where do you go. But if the governing body's not actually going to look at changing it, we could rattle our gums forevermore. You know,
yeah.
I mean, we can look and look at the situation there of Hearts, a prime example. The manager comes in, he gets 6 months in the job. He failed in the fact that Hearts were looking for more success from him. They probably should have got more success. I think they were unlucky. But they've binned him, and they've brought in a manager who is going to be taking the place in Hearts from Kilmarnock. Now, to me, I don't think that Derek McInnes has done anything to justify that particular Hearts job, because it is a bigger club. It will have better finances with the guy Bloom probably, being able to give him some cash. But Kilmarnock was a well-run club. And if you look at it under the Scotland manager, you've got to say to yourself, he done a great job there. No different finances. And Derek McInnes has been battered constantly this season. And he struggled a bit last year, although he did get to the top stages. But the way I look at it is that's not a step forward for Hearts in my eyes, especially when they're looking at going forward. And that's where we are struggling in Scotland. You guys will probably see it, Tom and Steve, but you look at some of the highlights some weeks and you go, whoa, would you pay to go and watch that? No.
Yeah. Tom, you're away again. Whatever you're doing, there you are. We can hear you there.
Yeah, okay. So I think the big difference for me, and I'm only just over the border, and it just doesn't get talked about down here. 25 years ago, the big rivalries in Scotland, and particularly Rangers, Celtic, obviously, but also Hearts, Hibs, and some of the Aberdeen, the other big clubs, would be talked about in schools over here and stuff. I don't even think kids at school are aware of Scottish football now.
You're not saying you were at school 25 years ago, are you?
No, well, probably not. No, it's long sailed now.
Yeah. I mean, to put you in a picture, guys, we spoke last week as regards a salary cap in Scotland to try to get closer to a level playing field, because at the moment, neither Celtic, I think it's back since 1980s that either a club outside of the old firm lifted the title up here. It's been Rangers and Celtic virtually for 30 years unchallenged. So that's one big thing. I think as the other 10 clubs drift off, obviously Celtic gets stronger. Rangers by right should get stronger, but they need to get their own house in order first of all. But we have no competition over a season to Rangers and Celtic. So I think it makes a product very, very difficult to sell to broadcasters. Broadcasters only interested in Rangers and Celtic. So for one, that's where the money is, etc. That's where the games that broadcasters want to show. I think any other games they show up here is by virtue of the need to show them. They don't have a choice, because they're not going to just sell 4 games a season or 6 games a season if they're drawn against each other in both cups. So we spoke about that. I think one of the big problems we also have up here, guys, and you probably won't be aware of this, is if we want to bring in change, it's got to align with what Rangers and Celtic want to do, because our voting system is 11-1. So basically it only needs one of the old firm clubs to disagree and it doesn't get carried. And we have to have 11 clubs agree with any changes we want to make up here out of our top 12. So that's nonsense as well. Dennis, that's something that's got to change. Is the voting system up here if they want to bring in a change, because that's ludicrous.
But the problem is that, with the exception of Rangers this particular year, because it's been really horrendous, I think that you'll find quite a lot of the old firm supporters are quite happy with what we have it now. The way the system is just now, the volume of people that go and watch matches are for Celtic and Rangers, right? There's no question I do about that. And therefore, the big two will always have the clout, because if you disturb the two of them, you've poked the bear. And the bottom line is, they won't accept it. So while you think that the governing body is in control, and there's an outside influence, and that is the old firm, and they're not really particularly wanting change, because they've got it sewn up. I'm looking at it just now, and I'm looking at that split that we have. I just don't know what that's for. I think it's a total joke. We split, and the top 6 are then battling away, and I'm thinking, Well, if 5 and 6 lose the games to the top lot, and the bottom 7 and 8, as Hearts and Motherwell now win, there might be a late run in the season. You might be getting your form back. They've just split them all apart.
But the alternative to that split is a 10-team league, and that's not an option. That's not an option.
You've got 6 teams then at the tail end of the season, 2 leagues. And I can't figure that out of what the real benefit is, because all you're doing is you're getting teams with their bottle going from number 6 down to the 12th. And you're finding then that teams that were maybe sitting okay, like Hearts and Motherwell, they were sitting okay, are then thrown into a relegation zone. I think it's right. And I think that's another example. But again, as I repeated right at the beginning, you could spend the full hour going through all the real issues of where this is not taking us forward in Scotland. But as far as if we just go back to it, because I always have a rant about everything, the bottom line is Celtic have been really, really good this year. But if we go back to last week's game against Aberdeen on Wednesday night, I look at it and I say, Aberdeen, where have you gone? The first start of the season, I think it was 12 or 13 games they went unbeaten. I might be right, Cammy, or was it more?
Yeah.
And they looked as if they were going to put a challenge in to the Old Firm. And then all of a sudden, rock bottom. And they come out and played on Wednesday night, and Celtic had only one regular player in their starting lineup. And by that, I mean he's played at least half the season, more. The rest have struggled a bit, either in the fringes or some have been invisible. They've never played. And they absolutely wiped the floor.
So the guys were a point to prove.
And we
guys
actually,
were a point to prove and play for cup final places.
Well, we actually spoke about this last week, and it was like, well, what's the score going to be when Brendan Rodgers sends out the full team to play this Aberdeen? Like, it'll be embarrassing next week in the Scottish Cup final. So the gap and the gulf between Celtic and the rest of the league is massive. And I don't think personally that if Celtic went and played in the English Premiership, they would avoid relegation. That's how bad I think it is at times. Because I don't think that Celtic, when you look at that second tier that played against Aberdeen, there's no many of them were a game with the bottom half of that Premier League teams. So that there is a massive gulf. And it just seems to be getting bigger. And it goes back to finances. If you look at both your teams, Tom and Steve, you can go out and spend £50 million and no bat an eyelid. You can buy the top half dozen teams.
Man United, Johnny.
In Scotland for that.
We go out and spend 50 million quid on players that wouldn't get in Celtic's team.
Aye. Yeah, I know.
Don't worry about that.
Aye. And there is an element of that, but you've got the facility to do that. Now, we don't have managers that have ever came up against that kind of spending power, and it would be interesting to see just how good they are, which we'll never see, because it's like going to Gretna or Albion Rovers or somewhere like that. You're never going to see that kind of finances. You just guddle away with what you've got. But basically, Scotland, the gulf is getting bigger, and I don't think there is much that we could sit here and do that will rectify it overnight.
I think you hit the nail on the head before, Dennis, and when you said that it's become an agent's paradise, Scotland, because they see it as a gateway for progression for players. And I don't know if a potential solution, and you guys will know more than me about it, but might be sort of quotas at youth levels, because it seems from the outside looking in that any good young player is just hoovered up at any age group by Rangers or Celtic, because that's who everyone wants to go to. But what about setting a quota at every age group that you're only allowed 30 players on the books or something like that? Yeah. So that second tier of players then has to go to a Hearts or a Hibs or an Aberdeen or a Kilmarnock or rather than having 60, 70 players at every age group and hoover up all the best players, and then that generates some revenue because you're bound to find those ones that become little gems that maybe at the second tier or third tier when they're 14, 15, but develop into the better players that your sort of mid-division clubs could sell for the higher profits. It takes years to... You have to stick with it. That's a problem. Something like that, you're not going to get overnight results.
One of the things that, if you look back, that cripples Scotland, and I think if you look at it, it has damaged our game, was the Bosman ruling. Because we had a lot of homegrown talent that was actually had to be played because that's where we were going. We didn't have finances, and the Bosman ruling, you had to play players. When that came in, you get an influx of cheap imports. It was like you've got the Chinese toy that will come in here and it's dangerous and no fit for purpose. And our market was flooded with them then, in terms of footballers. And what you're finding then is it affects our natural young talent, because you look at the soccer academies that we've got, if you want to call them that, and Celtic and Rangers have got good facilities. There's very little comes out of that. And managers are frightened to actually take the chance. They really are, because every point's a prisoner in Scotland, and they get hammered if they lose. But from a development, I think we should go back in Scotland, although you talk, Cammy, about a ceiling on wages, I would go back to having a split that you're only allowed, say, 4 foreigners within your team, and the rest have got to be homegrown. Now, whether you say it's homegrown and they've got to be UK would be maybe okay. It would still encourage maybe players coming from Chelsea that were English boys or wherever that could come in and play, but you have to have that percentage where there's no more than 4 outside the UK can play for your team, and that
would probably improve the Scottish standard of players, Dennis. But it wouldn't make the Scottish League any more sort of watchable from the outside, would it? I mean, the reason the Premier League is so full of money is because all the best foreigners want to play in the Premier League.
Diversity, yeah,
you're right.
If you had 5 or 6 top foreigners at each club in Scotland, then everything follows on with the money. The sponsorship will follow on, the TV rights will follow on. People want to watch it more. I know what you mean about homegrown talent. I mean, it does work to a certain degree, but it wouldn't make the Scottish League any better off, sort of financial wise, or sort of it wouldn't put it any more in the spotlight, would it?
But it's back to what Tom mentioned about the agents and offloading people that they think maybe will make them a quick buck and they'll move on. What it would allow the clubs to do then is say, well, we're only allowed, say, 4 in the starting lineup. We could maybe get 6 foreigners. But I think you would then look at the 6 foreign players as being of better quality, and you would be more selective. I mean, I look at some of the lads that St Mirren's done, and Stephen Robinson has done a magnificent job with them. But as I said to you, Cammy, one day, I says, when I switched on, I thought I'd watching an African nations game. There's been so many of the foreign players that have come in from different countries, and some of them are decent, right? But what I'm saying is, if you took the best of the crop, then and you filtered it in that your team could only have 4, then I think you might find that there just would be an influx of saying, "Oh, this guy's all right," and 2 weeks later he's absolutely minging, but you've paid money for him. You would restrict that. And you're right, Steve. We will never get to the level of what the English Premier League is. Certainly not in my lifetime, but that could be next week. But certainly in the short term, it's not going to be something that we will see in Scotland very soon.
Yeah, and try getting that by, listen, when we've got a government who's letting every Tom, Dick and Ahmed in, try getting that by the government, where you're going to turn around and say we're going to restrict it to 4 homegrown players. We're only going to have homegrown players, and that's a real issue, in terms of obviously trying to get that by a government. We've got it in the States. In America, there is a quota on foreign players at every club, where they have to have homegrown talent, etc. But I think they've got the benefit of the fact that the MLS is a developing league, so they can utilise that system, if you like. And let's be fair, Trump's looking after American interests. He's not caring too much about what they're bringing in from overseas, So whatever you say about Donald Trump comparison with Keir Starmer, at least he's got the interest of what's happening at home first and foremost, But as I say, I think that's going to be an issue in terms of trying to get that by a Scottish office or a home office or whatever else, or a foreign office in terms of trying to have that quota. And I think that's a great place to start. But Steve, I do agree with what you're saying in terms of if you restrict it to Scottish players, trying to sell the product overseas and indeed to an English market becomes very, very difficult. And that's the problem, Dennis, is the TV money comes from Sky and the TV money's from down south, who are only interested, obviously, in Rangers and Celtic. They're not interested in propping up our game. They're not interested in what's developing the game. All they are interested in is the kind of return they can get for showing Rangers and Celtic as many times as possible. Let's be fair, Sky will show 30 Rangers Celtic games all day, all season. If they could get away with it, they would do, because they're not interested in the Aberdeens, the Kilmarnocks, maybe Hearts and Hibs or whatever else. But let's be fair, some of the most exciting games this season have involved the clubs from Edinburgh, the clubs for Dundee, but I don't think you're going to be able to sell it to broadcasters as much as it's something we'd really all enjoy, I think.
But having said that, though, Cammy, there is games that you can be selective with. You just need to look at the English Premiership, and you look at the bottom. Leicester and Southampton, you couldn't pay me to watch that.
I agree with you.
Like that you've got, and it doesn't matter, it's any league in the world. But unfortunately, I think we're at the bottom of the barrel, and we just have to accept what it is. It's an inferior. And we just
you're saying we couldn't pay you to watch that. Last night you'd Wickham again. You'd Wickham at Charlton. What a mingery a game that was! But it's live on the telly on a Thursday night because England are selling their playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
What have we got? Airdrie against Stinishmuir, Cove Rangers against Airdrie now as well. You know what I mean? And an Athletic against. That's games that we are not going to sell, unfortunately. And I don't suppose it helps when you've got us saying they're games that are minging and whatever else, But
do you guys ever watch non-league football? Because that's the level almost where we can be dipping ourselves into now.
I very watch anything. I very watch anything.
Tom, your mates away again.
Steve, what do you say? You don't watch anything?
I don't watch anything below the Premier League, really. No, I'll catch the odd game here and there from the lower leagues, but I don't know. I mean, my father-in-law is a big non-league and lower league fan. He watches all the lower league games. He says it makes for better viewing, but I've tried one or two. I don't think it does.
I watched Scotland play non-league in the FA Cup. Who was it?
Tamworth.
Aye, I thought that was a good tie.
That was a good game. That was better than us.
Well, I look at some of the non-league players that are down there that could do a job in our Premier League. And certainly players in that Tamworth that could have done a job.
3 seasons ago, Wrexham were non-league. They're in the championship they're in the championship next season. 3 seasons ago, Rochdale were playing League One football. Last night I watched them getting beat 4-3 by Southend with a cracking comeback by Southend. There's games there. Oldham Athletic. I'm throwing a couple of games for your neck of the woods, Tom. Oldham Athletic the other night beat Halifax 4-0. They were 3 up inside the first quarter of an hour.
But you've got a sad life.
There's games there. Listen, I'm getting a chance to watch some games at night. You know that, But there's some exciting games on, and it's non-league stuff. Yeah. There is games out there, but again, you've got a choice. You can watch Oldham against Halifax, you can watch Rochdale against Southend, or you can watch Airdrie up at Cove Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not getting a product up here that's saleable. That's the problem.
Yeah. Tom, the company sponsors Gretna, right? How often do you get to watch Gretna? They're in the Lowland League. Your sound's
you're away again.
Yeah. No, can't hear you.
It's every so often.
No.
Tom, go out and come back in.
Steve, that's the kind of call we're looking for, a catch-up in a Friday afternoon when we see Tom, innit?
Yeah, I bet his microphone comes back on when we're talking about the Europa League final in a minute. I bet it comes back on.
Well, I think what we'll touch on first before we get to the Europa League is the league positions in England. Because
17th and 18th in the Europa League
final with Scottish football at this moment in time, other than the fact that the last games are this week, and I don't know, Cammy, just while Tom's away, who's the two that's going to go down? Is it stacks up now? St Johnstone have gone, Ross County, and I don't know what they get the penalty for in the dying seconds of the game.
Sorry,
last week.
excuse my French, but bloody hell. What was that all about? No wonder Dundee are raging at that one.
No, it was. I still couldn't figure out what the penalty was given for, and I've watched it 3 times, and just astounding. But anyway, I think Ross County throughout the season have been due their comeuppance, if you want to call it that, to be taken into the last days. So I think Ross County will still do it and be in the playoffs, but the people that are playing in the playoffs must be exhausted. Because I think the playoffs are stitched up again to suit the Premier League. Partick Thistle have played so many games now in the qualifying ties to get out of the playoffs. They're 2-0 down because they're exhausted with 2 games a week. And the other thing, I'm just having a rant about this, Tom, Steve, is the fact that when you look at the game on Tuesday night at Firhill, the stadium was half empty because people can't afford to go to the games 3 times a week. And that's what we were getting there, was they were down at Ayr United. Then they appeared on Tuesday night. That was Friday, sorry. Then they appeared on Tuesday night against Livingston. And then they've got Livingston again tonight. And that's just not feasible when you're trying to get a playoff. Plus, as well, you imagine these guys that are full-time, certainly, but having to play that amount of games just to be cannon fodder for the team that's sitting there at Ross County, who are looking as if they're the team that will play the winners of it. It just doesn't work out right. Anyway.
Tom, our playoffs up.
Is the sound working now?
That's it there, yeah. Again, it's intermittent, so.
Yeah, weird.
But there's one now, so on you go. Whatever you've got to say it just now, because it might be the last time we hear from you for another 10.
Yeah, I know, true enough. So, no, Dennis has made a good point there. I mean, I don't get to Gretna very often. I'd like to go more. As Dennis and Steve know, I travel a lot, so being at home is sometimes a luxury. But you know, I've been to Carlisle for years as well. You know, they're going to be a non-league club again next year. Big club in the north of England, and you know, a lot of history around the club. And you look at some of the numbers and names that come through the door, and I think they are comparative to the sort of bottom half of the Scottish Premier League, and that's going to be a non-league club next year. You know, Mark Hughes is the manager. You know, the gates can be anywhere from 7,000 to 10,000, sometimes 12,000 or 13,000. You know, and that's going to be non-league football in England next year. So, you know, that 5th division's professional in all but name now, I think, really, in England. And, you know, it's a tough league to get out of as well. You know, you look at clubs in League Two of England, Bradford City get huge crowds every week, and it really does go down the pyramid. But yeah, I think that monopoly in Scotland now has just become a real issue, and I think you've got to start at youth level. For me, it starts from there, and you see it as a 20-year project, which isn't a nice thing to hear if you want overnight success. But I don't think that's possible.
No,
under Ernie Walker, we started that 20-year project 30 years ago. You know, and that's the problem of we keep having these projects, and these projects never produce anything. You know, I'm watching a program today on the decline of the German international side, and they're down to the lowly depths of 14th in the world. We'd love to be there.
Well,
you know, we'd love to be there.
Havertz has been one of them. He's dragged them down into the mire.
He's part of that decline.
That's right.
He definitely is part of that decline, you know, but
So the story's similar, Cammy, over there. I mean, obviously they're starting from a much loftier position. They've won multiple European and World Cups, obviously, but I think it starts from the club's team. You know, they've got a one club league basically.
Yeah.
You know, Dortmund had a few years under Klopp where they really challenged and won the title, but I don't know off the top of my head, but I assume Bayern have probably won 18 of the last 20 titles.
Yeah, you're right.
Leverkusen won it last year, and Dortmund won one, but I don't remember many others.
Yeah.
No, and again, that's that monopoly, and again, it's down to finances. They're the best supported club in the world, Bayern Munich, even more members than what Barcelona have. You know, so, and at the end of the day, they're not interested, coming back to my old topic, on screwing the fans. You know, they're quite happy to not take the money from supporters because they are getting it from other sources. You know, so their dearest season ticket's probably half the price of what the cheapest one is at Tottenham, or is it Old Trafford, or whatever else, certainly a damn sight cheaper than what it is at Arsenal. So that's a real issue. Yeah, I totally agree with that, Tom. That monopoly in Germany, and that's just going to get worse. Again, I've watched a couple of documentaries on that, and it's just going to get worse and worse what's happening in the Bundesliga, because they are just in a position where they can just bring in the best young talent, the best experienced talent. Steve, it must have been painful watching Harry Kane lift his first trophy somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, good luck to him. I don't hold anything against him. I mean, he was brilliant for us for several years. He just deserves his break elsewhere. But no, good luck to him. I mean, he came close at Tottenham to lifting the trophy several times. I mean, Tottenham are the perennial sort of runners up. I mean, I saw a statistic the other day. I couldn't believe it. Since Tottenham last won something, they've if you count semi-finals of cups, finals of cups, and top four in the league, Spurs have done that 20 times since they last won something. Semi-finals, losing semi-finals, losing finals, and finishing second, third, or fourth. They've done it 20 times since they last won a trophy.
Have you been doing the team talks, Biggin? Because I know how enthusiastic you can be. Have you been doing the team talks?
I don't know. Honestly, at the start of the season, I was for Postecoglou. I could see he had injuries. I could see he was still trying to play the same way. But the last 2-3 months, it's absolute dross. Honestly, it's absolute dross. With these 2 or 3 months ago, we looked quite good going forward, and all our defenders are injured. Now all our defenders are back, and we look shite going forward. Honestly, it's absolute rubbish. We played a mid-table side at the weekend, Palace. I watched that game, and I tell you what, they was much better than us. And they're a mid-table side, Palace. It's unbelievable what's happening now. I mean, I know we're going to talk about the Europa League. I mean, Spurs will probably won't win, but I hope they do, obviously. But the consolation prize for not winning the Europa League is you get a new manager next season, which could be a bonus for either team.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But the difference is if you win at Manchester, if Manchester United get that manager, they'll take Postecoglou, and if Spurs win it, they'll take Amaran. So don't go overly excited, mate.
Yeah, I mean, if we win the Europa League, you have to give Postecoglou another chance. But I haven't seen anything. I mean, like I say, when we was losing games by the odd goal and winning a few by 2 or 3 at midpoint of the season, I could still see what was going on and what his strategy was. But I can't see it anymore. We just look terrible. And I can't see the biggest bonus about this Europa League final next week is the fact that all our attacking midfielders now injured. Maddison, Kulusevski, and Bergvall has been our best player this season. All our attacking midfielders are now out of the game, which means we have to play at least 2 holding midfielders, but probably Bentancur and Basuma. And it means we can play the same way as we played in Eintracht Frankfurt and in Bodo Glimt, when we actually looked really solid and deserved to win the games. And I know Tom said to me the other day it could be any score this game. It won't, because Spurs will be really negative next week. Take my word for it. You watch. They've got no attacking midfielders. You've got Dominic Solanke, who runs around like a headless chicken, holds the ball up well, does all right. He's at least he makes an effort. I'm not going to say for some of them, but next week's game will be really drab. I've just got a feeling, and if it's not really drab and it's really attacking, I think we're in for a high.
That would suit me if it's really drab, because I feel like we have the better moment players, let's call it, like a Bruno or a Casemiro, people who can do something out of the blue. Whereas I think Spurs, I think the success Spurs have had against United is when they've attacked us and they've actually played as a team. Over the last few games where you've battered us a couple of times.
Yeah.
But like you say, that's with Maddison and Kulusevski, to be fair.
Yeah, well, they can't play. So.
Yeah. I'm glad I'm meeting you on Tuesday, Tom, and not Thursday.
You're not meeting me on Tuesday.
Eh?
They meeting me, Dennis, on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Steve, I meant aye.
Aye. But Tom, the problem you're going to have against them is you're playing English opposition. You only raise your game when you're playing non-English opposition, and that's going to be your problem.
Yeah.
Again, okay, it's in Bilbao. That's where your best performance of the season's been. But
yeah, true enough. I don't know what to think of the game. I really don't. I don't know. I have no idea what it's going to be. I'd obviously love to see United win. Like I say, I think if it's tight, I'd like to think we've got, Fernandes has been in good form in the last 3 months. I think I've got the same reservations as Steve, though, in overall. I mean, I was for Amorim coming in. I like his attitude towards the management side of it. I think he's been quite sort of upfront about some of the issues. What I don't think has happened, I don't see any improvement in the players. I don't think in the time he's been there that he's actually improved the way any of the players play, which is a concern. And now, okay, he's not even had a full season. So, but you'd like to think that you'd start to see some sort of improvement in sort of the way we build up play from the back, or the shape when we've not got the ball. But we look just as open as we looked under Ten Hag. We look just as lost of ideas, unless it's Fernandes who's creating something. Nobody else seems to be able to create anything. Just as lost of ideas when we've got the ball. So up to now, I haven't seen any improvements from the previous regime, which was widely regarded as the worst team in United history. So it's not looking good.
Yes, it's a disaster when you've got no attackers left. It's a disaster when you've got no attackers left and you've got Harry Maguire in central defence. I mean, that's when you want anybody that can go forward.
Yeah.
Well,
we'll stick Maguire up front with 5 minutes to go, won't we? And that'll win us the game.
So I was going to say, when you're relying on Fernandes and Maguire to be your two most creative players, of the players who are going to get you a goal or nick you a game or whatever, you're in a wee bit of trouble, But some of the other guys you have there are just no. I mean, it means Spurs are struggling to put a side in the park due to injuries. You've got a decent squad. You've got a moderately full-strength squad. They just look dreadful. They really, really do. From back to front, they look completely bereft of ideas. Casemiro's turned it on in Europe, which is fair enough. But beyond that, you don't seem to offer anything. I mean, by the way, both my lads are United fans. United and Clyde, they're a strange combination. But hey, so I tend to get them going on about what's happening, So, but you just don't seem to be offering anything.
The word I always use is balance. We don't look balanced as a team at all, either with the ball or without it. The partnerships don't work either at the back. I spoke to Dennis a lot about how I think centre-backs, and we play at 3, obviously, but I think it's all about partnerships and teamwork at centre-back. I don't think it's necessarily the best individuals that always make the best defences, because you've got to work together. And they just look like they're just doing their own thing. They don't look like they're working
that when you look at overall since the manager's come in, you look at 2 players that have gone on and left the club and been highly successful. McTominay and Rashford.
Yeah.
Now,
I would add Anthony to that list, unfortunately.
But Anthony's done well at Betis, yeah.
And I look at that and I say to myself, that's a sign of a manager that's not been able to identify their talent and get the best out of them.
McTominay was away before he came in, Dennis.
Yeah, and I think
McTominay was gone before he came in.
Yeah.
I think if McTominay had still been there when he came in, he would have been playing every game.
But having said that, why did the club itself, when you look at it collectively, without pointing the finger just at the one man, why did the club collectively, and you're saying money, Cammy, but, when you look at it, Rashford and McTominay should definitely not have left the club. And the club should never let that happen.
I think this is my bigger concern than on the field is off the field. I think it's a shambles at the minute. I think it's absolutely comical, or not comical, actually, it's worse than that, that they're refusing to pay for staff to go to a European Cup final. And it's not the first time. And I think it shows you this sort of discord or disconnect between the playing and managing staff and the hierarchy of the club, that Amorim and Bruno Fernandes have come out and said they'll pay for the staff to go if the club aren't willing to. Well, that's a show of dissent against the hierarchy of the club. But I think it's the right thing to do, and it shouldn't be down to the manager and the captain to pay for the staff to go to a Europa League final. The club, at the size of Manchester United, should be covering their staff to travel to that. The stuff he's doing off the field, some of the wage cuts, some of the people he's getting rid of in backroom to save pennies in the grand scheme of Manchester United is not the way the club should be run. It's not the way the club has been built up to be run. It's not everything dating back to the 50s and 60s and before that of how the club has been built up. It just goes against everything. You know, as a kid, I read all these books about United from the Newton Heath days into, you know, the Busby Babes and the way the club was run as a family club and treat people right. And that's what troubles me more than anything is the backroom stuff at the moment really concerns me.
Yeah, but what you've got is the driving force behind that comes from an oil industry. And what you've got to be seen there is the guy's just lost, and it's nothing really financially it would affect Man United, but he's just lost just under £7 billion recently, £7 billion because of the climate and where it's in. But I mean, the same guy has put up prices at Man United. He's thinned down the staff. A lot of things there that you would say you've really got to keep that loyalty there within the club that you're talking about, Tom. And it's not, and it is a business, but there's a way you can run a business. And I don't think that's the correct way, that you just cut numbers back. Well, we know that through the way our company work as well. You don't do that. And I just look and think, is the guy at the helm got the vision that's required to take Man United to where they should be? Because basically the performances throughout the season has been absolutely dire for a Man United. Now, I remember last year when we used to sit and talk about the fact of, what would you say, the two of you actually sitting and debating who was actually going to be at the top 4 and top 5. Yeah. We were. It's
going to be close though. Finishes in the bottom 4, isn't it? Because
used to were at loggerheads debating who was going to be in top of each other. So you say to yourself, no, I could see Steve going, no, we'll be ahead of Man United. But you're talking about Champions League positions. You're not actually talking about where you're sitting at this moment in time.
It wasn't that long ago, Dennis, was it? You go back to the start of last season. First 10 games, Postecoglou won 8 and drew 2. We was top of the league by about 5 or 6 points after 10 games last season. And then it all fell apart after that. He's lost a lot more games than more than half the games he's lost. It's just fell apart. I mean, the only good thing about this is we've got our full strength defence. I mean,
I'll never forget the game where it fell apart.
That's one to scare you.
It was hilarious.
What was that? Chelsea. that was the game where it fell apart. Yeah, where we had 2 sent off and defended on the halfway line. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we still had 2 good chances to score when we had 9 men.
Anyway. Decided to play 60 yards from his own goal with 9 men, playing everyone inside in their own half.
But I mean, we've even rested the goalkeeper tonight. That's how terrified he is of injuries.
But yeah, we've gone full team tonight. I just had a quick look. We've gone full team, which I'm surprised about.
Yeah, but Steve, if you summed up just now, and Tom, you can do it next. What has been the failing of this season, because you're sitting in 17th spot with just more or less the same points as Man United? So what would you say has been the failing? Because it has been a failing. It's not been a good season. I don't know when Manchester United, Tottenham were as low as that.
Well, two teams in the European final, and we're asking a serious question as to where have the both of you failed this season.
I mean, that sums up the Europa.
It sums it up, doesn't it? It really does.
I mean, any team in the top 17 in the Premier League could get to the final of the Europa League. And if you drop down to that Europa Conference, I mean, you might as well have the non-league winners in that. I mean, that's terrible. I mean, Chelsea have been big odds on since the start. I mean, Chelsea are far too good for that. And they're pretty average at best, so far too good. I mean, the main thing is we haven't conceded against 20-minute Villa yet, so we're still doing all right.
So what's been the flaw then?
Do you know what, Des? At the start of the season, the big thing was all the injuries, and I sort of believe that. But that's not it. At the start of the season, we still looked half decent, and we lost a few players. We're losing too many games, but you can still see this. I think there's absolutely no spark. I think Postecoglou's run out of ideas. He's totally run out of ideas, and he doesn't know what to do. And I don't know. They say there's no rift in the dressing room. It's easy to say, the players don't like the managers, but they say there's no rift in the dressing room, and they all like him. Mm-hmm. So Well, they're probably liking because they have to put out 70% effort every week and get away with it. That's probably what they're liking. But they just, I don't know, this doesn't seem to be. They just don't look the same team to me. Even halfway through the season, when we were starting to fall down the table, you could still see there was something there, but it's totally gone. I've watched our last 4 or 5 games, and we are just dreadful, absolutely dreadful. Teams like Crystal Palace make us look second rate.
Yeah,
and it's not even the teams like Tottenham, the squad they've got. If they had 5 players out, they should be at least playing as well as Crystal Palace.
Yeah,
there's no two ways about it. It's terrible. It's just dreadful. I honestly don't know what it is. I don't think it is the injuries anymore. I just think that I don't know. I think it's just dreadful. I don't know why. And maybe if they won this competition, something would spark. But I don't see a winning the competition, finishing 17th in the league, sparks your season after. I don't see how that would happen. So,
but does that fill you with hope and look at things, Tom, that basically says Steve's more or less handing you that cup? You just need to turn up because they're that bad?
I don't think that's the case. Like I say, we haven't beaten them for 7 games.
Like I say, there's every possibility that Spurs will turn up next week and absolutely turn it on. Because and in some ways that would annoy me more because they've been so shite for the last 7 or 8 games. I mean, then you start asking yourself the question: well, where's the effort been in the last 7 or 8 games in the last 2 or 3 months?
So that wouldn't keep you happy for keeping the manager, Steve, if he actually did beat Man United.
I don't know. I mean, like I say, we've seen a lot of good things that Postecoglou's done, and sometimes he makes us look like a team that could beat anybody. But I don't know. Just lately, much more often than not, we look worse than average, and even the average mid-table teams look better than us, and that's why we're in the position we are in the league, not just because of injuries, because them teams are as good, if not better than us.
Well, with somebody on last week, and the same question was asked, if Postecoglou does,
he'll get rid.
Sorry,
he'll get rid. He wants rid.
Yeah.
So there you go. Man, you go.
We'll put, if you win the cup, would you keep Postecoglou, or do you just spin him anyway?
It's a difficult question. I mean, you shouldn't really, but I mean, Daniel Levy sacked Mourinho just before the final of a competition, didn't he? So it's hardly possible. I mean, I don't know. I think Levy's seen better days. I think I'll get rid of Levy. And I mean, Daniel, you said earlier on, Dave, if teams like Spurs can spend millions if they want to, yeah, they can, but Spurs can spend 50 million on a player, but Levy will only spend 50 million on a player if he's worth 100 million. You don't. There's no chances taken with Daniel Levy. You've got to get good value. But
hang on a minute, Steve. You spent 50 or so on Solanke. He is not £100 million player. Maybe 15.
He could be. He's a £100 million headless chicken. He runs around a lot, but I don't know. He's big and he's strong and he holds it up well and he puts in a lot of effort, but he's hardly got the skill set of a Harry Kane.
You can get a player like that down in non-league for a damn sight less than 50.
Yeah, I mean the big guy at Nottingham Forest. He's a similar player to Solanke. He's a very similar player. Chris Wood, is it? Yeah.
Chris Woods, and he's on 20 a season.
Yeah,
he's done 20 goals this season.
He's a very similar player, big, strong, holds it up well, scores a few with his head. He's very similar to Solanke. You wouldn't say Solanke was worth 2 or 3 times what he's worth, would you? So.
No, definitely not.
So, as a politician, Steve, you've still not answered me. Benham, keep him if you win the cup.
Do you know what? I honestly don't know. I mean, I keep remembering back to the sort of start of last season when we went 10 games unbeaten, and a lot of times this season when we looked really good. It just worries me that there's been far too many times now when we've looked worse than poor, and it's a difficult one. I'd get rid of him now, I think.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So you've got to Benham in your hands. Yeah. Tom,
I was going to say your arse must be your arse must be really, really sore, Steve, with these splinters for the fence, mate.
Yeah. Tom, same situation. From your point of view, it's been dreadful, and you look at the manager. I don't think he'll get binned, but he must be in a bit of a shaky nail if Tottenham do turn you over. There'll be big question marks on that, will there not?
I think, he hasn't had a full season, so I think he'll get a full season at least, or he'll get the chance to start a season and get through half of next season, whatever happens. And I think that's only fair enough. I don't think you can give somebody who's going to change the style of football, even though I've said that I haven't seen much improvement, which I haven't, in the playing standard or the players at all. I think you've got to give him a shot at a full season and a full summer into a season. If we win, look, it's going to be an acid test for him because he's going to be straight into the Champions League. If we lose, then he's going to be under a lot of pressure next season.
Yeah.
A lot of pressure, and we'll have to start well in the league, or else he's going to be under a hell of a lot of pressure because we won't have any Europe if we lose.
Has he done a better job than Postecoglou?
Not so far.
No,
not so far.
So, you're not having the same grumps as Steve is, though. Is it just basically because...
It's time, though. Postecoglou's coming to the end of his second full season, isn't it?
Yeah. Statements he's made,
When he always wins a trophy.
I think if I put... Yeah, well, he always wins a trophy, so you guys are bound to win. But if I think I've put a finger on what I think's wrong in the playing side of things at United, I still think it's our central midfield area. We haven't got a player who can take the ball off the back three and pass through the lines. Yeah. One of my favourite players of all time at United was Michael Carrick. I think he was chronically underrated. Obviously, we bought him off Spurs. Massively underrated. Didn't play anywhere near enough games for England. And if United could find another Michael Carrick somewhere, that would be worth its weight in gold. I like this look of this kid Wharton at Palace. Looks that sort of player. Looks comfortable on the ball. But we don't have anybody like that. We don't have anybody who can take the ball under pressure and dictate the tempo of a game. And if you don't have that in your team, when you play the top boys, you just get turned over all the time and you're on the back foot. And we're a million miles away from that. There's not a single player in our squad could do that job.
Yeah, I looked to the West Ham Man United game, and I actually thought these were really poor in relation to West Ham. As we know, I've not set the hell on fire, but an average team still managed to turn Man United over quite comfortably. And that was the disappointing thing I looked from Man United's point of view, that these were easily beaten without that violent desire that you would normally expect from a Man United team.
I think after those two games, I said on the Friday, after the two games in Europe on the Thursday, United and Spurs had both get done last weekend by Palace and West Ham. Yeah, I think it was coming a miles off because all that's been on their mind since the semi-finals were drawn was the final, and it's played out. It's a shootout for basically the future of both clubs, I think, over the next 5 years, because the money from the Champions League and the prestige for signing players and stuff. I genuinely think it's a massive game. It's a massive game.
You sometimes get finals where you think this is a mismatch, like we talk about Scottish Cup final, where we're thinking that Celtic are so far ahead of Aberdeen, and we discussed it earlier. But this is not a mismatch. This is actually perfect. And I think we could be one of the best finals ever, because there's elements from both clubs that have got something to prove as well as just winning this cup. And I think that's the real nitty-gritty of this, that you could be hell-bent and actually going hell for leather and actually going at each other. And if you don't, you're going to get targeted as being negative, and whoever comes out losing that because they've no had a go at it will be slaughtered. And I think both managers have really got to make an attempt to try and win this with a bit of flair.
I mean, Spurs were favourites all year for this competition, and it's only the last month that, if you look at the odds now, United are favourites to win now. They're even money, and Spurs are 2-1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
would you agree with that, Tom?
So what's your score prediction, Steve?
I think it'll be 0-0.
Okay.
0-0. And who's going to lift the cup at 0-0?
Yeah, I think we look absolutely garbage all game, and you look good, and we beat you with the last 5 minutes with the Casemiro winner.
I think that statement, Tom, the first bit will probably be right, but we're not going to look good. I think the neutrals will watch this throughout Europe and say, "What is this pile of shite? These two teams in the European final."
I think the one thing this does highlight, though, because obviously both Spurs and United, as well as in the new group stage, which I actually think I was really sceptical about going into the European competitions this year, but I think has worked really well, the new group stages and the European competitions.
We were
It's
saying
been
that
real
last
positive.
week. Last week, seeing
And
the phases of that new league structure. It's absolutely
it's been
brilliant.
really good. And but I think what it's highlighted to me is the competition in the English Premier League now of those mid-table clubs, not United, the Spurs, because we're bottom table. But your Brentfords, your Brightons, your Fulhams, your Palace, there's no mugs in that league anymore apart from the bottom three, and they're all the promoted teams. And we talked about Scottish football before, but I think English football's got a bit of a concern about teams coming up from the Championship and the gap to those clubs you would have looked at previously. I mean, everyone going into this season probably would have thought, okay, your Ipswiches and you might be able to sneak above Nottingham Forest, but look at what they've done. I know they've dipped a little bit in the last few weeks, but what a season they've had. And the strength in the league, there's no real gimmies. And you look at, like Steve said, I think you could throw a Bournemouth or a Brighton or a Brentford into the Europa League, and they'd have every chance of winning it.
Without a doubt, yeah. And I mean, you just mentioned there's something. We go back right to the start of the season when we discussed it, and I actually thought that Ipswich, with the way they played last season, would have made their mark in the Premier League. And it's been disappointing because they've just never turned up, or the gulf is so big.
Yeah, and I've watched a lot of Ipswich games, and they've played well in a lot of patches of games. They've played some good football and looked decent. But you're right, the gulf, that sort of killer instinct or that cutting edge, just in the big moments, they've just fallen a bit short. And they're not a bad team either, Ipswich. They're a decent team. Yeah. They play some good football.
Defensively, they're poor, and their keepers, they've got a weak goalkeeper.
Yeah.
From middle to front, they've looked good. The young lads who they got from Man City, who I think has been a revelation. Delap has been outstanding. Liam Delap's been outstanding this season.
And he's going to United, isn't he?
As well. Is he going to United? Yeah.
That's the strong rumours. 30 million release clause he's got. So they reckon United have triggered it already. They reckon they're in conversations with him already.
Just on talking about transfers, we had a conversation last week, and it's Jamie Vardy. Where do you think he'll end up?
On reality TV, I would say. I don't think probably in the jungle. I'm a celebrity, get me out of here, something like that.
No, that's his wife.
His wife will not let him.
Nice. I tell you what, though, is he 500 games for Leicester? His last game's going to be his 500th game, and
brilliant.
He's been he's done well for himself coming up from where he's come from and to win the Premier League title. And
if it wasn't Harry Kane, he'd have played a lot more for England as well, wouldn't he? So
yeah, he would have played a lot more.
Some of his goals have been magnificent. It really is. And you look at where he came from. He came from what we've talked about, non-league level.
He was very late developer, wasn't he? He was in his mid-20s before he started playing in the Premier League.
Yeah. By the time he got out of jail.
But he's been a great player.
You look at it and think he's the type of player, if he is looking to go to pastures new by being less, I would suggest that Celtic should bite his arm off, because Brendan Rodgers knows him from the Leicester days, and I just think
it'd be a great fit.
Oh, magnificent! Because what we've got in the forward lines and Celtic and Rangers are just a joke, but he would bring something dynamic to Scottish football.
Talking of free transfers, what do you make of the rumour about Liverpool offering De Bruyne a contract? That would shake it up a bit.
Yeah, it would.
He wouldn't go there.
You don't think so? Money talks, Steve. Money talks. And then taking us on to that, just because you flagged it up, the FA Cup, which is tomorrow.
Obviously, we'll all be supporting Palace.
Yeah. Steve, you'll be loving Palace because they're just.
It's like I say, it's one of the best facts about being a supporter of a London team is only Palace, Tottenham, and Chelsea can win anything this season, and Arsenal can't.
Crystal Palace seem to be an outsider in relation to. They have had a few shocks this year. Are we not looking at Crystal Palace maybe with blinkers on because we're seeing that they're not maybe.
They've got some good players. They've got some good players, Dennis, Crystal Palace. Players that have broken into the England team. Mm-hmm. They've got some good players. Players that have really stepped up this season. And if they lose them,
Palace have got exactly what United haven't. Palace have got balance. The
Yeah.
squad is balanced with the wing backs, and the central midfield have got a good mix of talent in there with Wharton on the ball and some runners around him. And then you've got Eze as a skill and big, that Mateta's a handful up front, a hell of a handful. They've got a real balanced team, and that won't be a kicking for. I think City will do them in the end. I think class will play out, but I think it won't be a kicking for City. That will be a tough game.
Yeah. No, I think that's an interesting one. I'm just looking to see what time the kickoff is tomorrow. It's 4:30.
It's a strange one, aye.
Strange time again, but no, it's interesting.
It's usually FA Cup final at 3:00. Well, it shouldn't be before the end of the season either, but there you go.
Yeah, and then if we look at the Champions League, what's your thoughts on that? I mean, we spoke last week about the game between Barcelona and Inter Milan, which was magnificent, and that could have been a final.
Yeah, superb both legs. Some of the best hours of football you'll ever watch.
Yes. Now, can PSG and Inter throw up the same thing? Is that possible?
Nope.
Yeah, I think they can. I do. I think they can. I think PSG will go and attack and have the ball, and I think Inter will play that pragmatic football and hit them on the break.
Where have Inter come from?
I think Inter might beat them.
Where have Inter
My money's on Inter.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're right, Steve. The dark horse. Yeah.
Well, but again, look at how, I mean, he's tied to the club, but how much would any of the Premier League top clubs, apart from City, who've got Haaland, how much would Liverpool or Arsenal or United or Spurs give for that Martinez into what a player he is?
Yeah.
What's that for Inter?
Yeah, Lautaro Martinez.
Outstanding player.
The season and a half ago, didn't Spurs sign Bentancur and Kulusevski from Inter because they?
No, that was Juve.
Oh, was it Juve? Was it? Oh, I was going to say.
Yeah, that was Juve.
Yeah.
But no, I was surprised. It surprised me. They looked really good. PSG didn't surprise me, but the English teams in the Champions League always seems to be one from Europe that sort of pops up and looks like a world beater from nowhere. I thought it was PSG, but it might even be into this season. But
2 seasons ago as well.
Yeah,
PSG.
Looked outstanding. So no, I my money's on Inter. I think Inter have got enough about them to win this.
No,
I know Dennis is with PSG. I'm going to get something, Dennis. I'm going to get something right.
I know that your league predictions are ringing this year.
They've been horrendous this year.
Well, I've said PSG for day one, and I think I'll
you actually said it for day one. You said it for the quarterfinals. Don't talk that shit. You said it for day one.
Start talking about it before
the quarterfinals.
Well, if you're looking about it, we never
wait until the 2-0 up in the semis against
quarterfinals.
Hey, Tom, it's not a dinosaur to start trying to rewrite history, is it?
I know that. The quarterfinals is no bad. You can't go too far ahead at my age. You just don't start at the beginning of the season. I think though that it's going to be a good final, but it'll take a bit of doing to beat the Barcelona and again. Just another question, you two guys: is it disappointing not to have an English team in the final? Or is it something that maybe we've just taken for granted over the years?
I think
let's be fair. When Steve's option was Arsenal, I don't think he'd be disappointed in the final.
I don't think it's a little bit disappointing because I think we have got the best league in Europe by a mile. But like I just said, there always seems to be a team that pops up from nowhere. And all of a sudden looks like a world beater. I mean, you wouldn't have said at the start of the season that PSG were the best side in Europe, would you? By a long way. No. All of a sudden they popped up and they in Europe.
It's actually a good thing for football that PSG have become a better side after they've got rid of all the star names, I think. Sure. It just shows you it's not just about having the big name players up front and they're playing as a team more, and I think the football's been way better than I've ever seen from PSG. I think some of the football they played against Liverpool, I mean, they got beaten that first leg against Liverpool, which was an absolute crime, but they were superb in that game.
Oh, they outplayed Liverpool in both games, didn't they? It was amazing. Terrible.
And if you look, I know Liverpool have tailed off a bit towards the end of the season, but they've had the league run since Christmas. But at the time they were going into that flying Liverpool, and they've been by far and away the best team in England. And PSG showed them up really over 2 legs. Is it disappointing, Cammy? A good question. Yes, I think it is disappointing for no English teams to be in the. Like Steve says, I think it's the best league in Europe. I'd like, as long as it's not Liverpool, I'd like an English team to be in the final. But yeah, it's I think they've all been knocked out by PSG, haven't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Has it been a good season then overall when you assess it?
What, for Tottenham? No, probably not.
Not necessarily, just because you both highlighted the flaws and the strengths of both Tottenham and Man United. But if you look at the league overall, has it been a good season?
No, I don't think so. I think that you've had one team in Liverpool that have improved dramatically, and you've got most of the others that have gone slightly backwards.
Mm-hmm.
You can't say Arsenal are as good as last season. You can't say City are as good as last season.
Yeah.
Forest have obviously stepped forward. You can't say Chelsea are as good as last season. Spurs and United are definitely worse than any season. So I don't know. I think that so many teams in the Premier League seem to have gone backwards. I mean, you couldn't say that Liverpool made them look like they've gone backwards. And Liverpool definitely stepped forward, but they deserve to win the league easily, and they did. But I think it's been a disappointing Premier League, to be honest. I think that a lot more teams could have challenged in this season. It's one of those seasons where someone could have challenged from nowhere. I know Forest nearly did, but that was never quite going to happen. And it was a season when teams like Tottenham, Chelsea, Man United, the teams that normally finish like 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, it's the sort of season when one of those teams could have seriously challenged for the league, because it's been that sort of season, but it never happened. It's been a bit disappointing for me, the Premier League this year.
Yeah. I think outside of the odd story like Forest are the obvious one that have been a good story through the season. And I think those three clubs I mentioned before, Brighton, Brentford and Bournemouth, continuing to impress. I still think Iraola's the next manager at City when Guardiola goes, personally.
No, it's coming to Tottenham next season, Iraola, definitely.
Yeah, maybe. I think whoever of the so-called big clubs snaps him up first will have a good manager. I think he's a real future talent, Iraola. But I don't think it's been a good season, Dennis. I don't think it's been a good season.
Yeah. I think,
like Steve says, Arsenal have flattered to deceive. They've had a lot of injuries up front, obviously, as we know. They're not the same team when Saka's not fit. Man City obviously had their issues through the middle of the season where they couldn't buy a win. Chelsea have been Chelsea. God knows a different team turns up every week. I've literally got no idea what Chelsea style of football they play or what team they're going to select or anything. I have no concept of how Chelsea are trying to approach playing football. And then probably for every other fan, it's been nice to see United and Spurs, particularly United, obviously be so crap. But it's not been a vintage Premier League season at all. It's not.
I think when you look at the big hitters, both of your teams are big hitters. And even West Ham, who you would expect to be up in that top 10. You look at Man City have been poor, very poor by their own standards. Chelsea have just touched on. Newcastle punched above their weight, dipped, thought they were really going to be strong. Arsenal have never been a finished article since the fact that they've not got a centre forward. But you look at teams that should be up there and you would expect to be up there, has probably diluted how good the season would have been, not just because you two guys have been down near the bottom. I think it's be the same for everybody when you're viewing it.
We probably should have mentioned Newcastle, shouldn't we?
Tottenham up there.
We probably should have mentioned Newcastle. They've stepped up this season, but they had a lot of injuries last season, and they haven't had that this season. But
I think it's not easy to say with the United hat on, but Liverpool have been by far and away the best team. Though that first half of the season, they were electric. He's found a real good mix in the team. Salah was obviously on fire, and they more than deserve to win the title. Hope for the sake of the Premier League next season, the likes of Tottenham and United are miles away from challenging. But even your Villas, he's a really good manager. Emery, could they step up next season to make a challenge?
Yeah.
Newcastle, Arsenal
probably sums up the Premier League when 20-minute Villa were pushing for a Champions League place, didn't it? So.
I'll be honest. I think the two of you are coming at this with a big club hat on. I think your Premiership this year, when you look at what Fulham have done, when you look at the form of Brighton, Brentford, some of these provincial clubs, I think you've had Forest as well, as you say, what Newcastle have done. I think the Premiership this season has been much more open. We criticise leagues in Germany, we've criticised leagues in Spain, we've criticised the Italian leagues for essentially being duopolies or monopolies. But I think this season, in terms of what the English League, the Premiership, has produced this season, some of these clubs have been outstanding. You know, I think you look at it that way. Yeah, Man United have been shit. Spurs have been even worse. You know, Man City haven't excelled. Yeah, so your big clubs have really hit the skids. But when you look at what some of your provincial sides have done in the league and the games they've given, you know, Forest, was it Forest 7, Brighton 1 or Brighton 7, Forest 1? I can never remember which it was. You know, some of these games have been outstanding this season. So, yeah, big clubs have been shit, but I think it's been a much more expansive and open league than what we've been used to in recent times.
Yeah, but I think, Cammy, though, that you get a wee bit blinkered because over the years, or certainly my life, the teams that were big teams was the Man Uniteds and the Tottenhams.
Yeah, I know.
And you always found that there was more flair, more excitement than saying watching Brentford and Brighton. I don't know. You just feel that they're the teams you really watch. But I know what you're saying. Yeah, they've been disappointing, Tottenham and Man United, and other teams have stepped up to the plate and have done well. But again, if I had to look at it and say they're 16th and 17th spot in the Premier League with Man United and Tottenham, and then I look at 8th and 9th, which is Brentford and Brighton, what game would I go and watch tomorrow? I think I would take the Man United and Tottenham.
I'd take Brentford Brighton all day long. I would take Brentford Brighton all day long because I think in terms of excitement, I think in terms of entertainment.
What, Tom?
Yeah. I'd go and watch Brentford Brighton, and I'm a United fan.
Yeah. And as I say, I think we're coming at it, and as I say, it's not a criticism either of the two of you, but I think you're both coming at it with big club mentality, you know, and watching how dreadful both your clubs have been this season and what they've achieved. But when you look, as I say, Newcastle Champions League place, you know, Forest pushing for a Champions League place for most of the season. You know, Chelsea disappointing in stages and probably one of the most inconsistent clubs all season, if you don't include Manchester City. You know, but as I say, when you get to likes of Brighton, Brentford, Bournemouth, Dennis, you've sat here and praised Bournemouth on a number of occasions for the games that you've watched them. You know, and some of the players they've got up front, you know, Clivert, they've got Emerson, you know, Edelson, sorry. Some of the guys they've got are outstanding.
But I'm not saying they're bad teams. What I'm saying is it's like the 5-star hotel might have dipped a wee bit at this moment in time. If you use that as an analogy, you always look at Brighton and Brentford as being a 4-star hotel. And I still look at the fact I would, at this moment in time, would look at the clash between the two of them sitting next to each other further down the league. In this particular game, that's all I'm thinking about. But no, I wouldn't know. Any Premier League game I'd go and watch. Any Premier League.
I think in terms of what it's offered this season, it's probably been one of the most exciting. The race for the title's been hellish, you know, because it's been one club. But that's the same as every other league, with the exception of Serie A and La Liga. You know, La Liga was settled last night with Barcelona.
You've got to remember what Cammy's a Clyde supporter. So Premier League's going to look great for top to bottom.
Yeah, I disagree with that one. But never mind. Right, listen, before we pack things up, two things I'm going to, well, actually one thing I'm going to mention, which is pretty much linked. Napoli and Serie A look as if they're going to lift it, or at least, in all likelihood, they win this weekend. They win Serie A with two Scotsmen in midfield in the shape of McTominay and Billy Gilmore. McTominay, I think, has been one of the best signings of recent seasons for what he's done for Napoli, but it's two Scotsmen. Dennis, last night, Lewis Ferguson lifted a trophy in Italy as well with Bologna, you know, in terms of they beat AC Milan last night to lift the Spanish Cup. First trophy in 51 seasons. The Scots are having a great time over in Italy.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, they've come out the wilderness to go and sell their wares abroad, and it's been absolutely brilliant. And I just hope, and it's a shame we're not getting the Euros this year. It would have been a revelation when we've got so many players going over there and doing well. I don't know if you guys actually have seen or watched them. Obviously, I've heard the likes of McTominay doing well, Billy Gilmore, etc. But
I remember when Billy Gilmore broke through, Dennis. He looked a really good player for Chelsea,
Yeah,
and then he
was.
played a few games for Scotland. He looked really good playing for Scotland. I remember he played for Scotland against England. He looked really good.
Yeah.
Is he on loan in Italy, or did they buy him?
You're on the ball.
They bought him. So I don't understand it. He came through, looked really good. What happened? I don't know. Why is he not still playing for
They
Chelsea?
went to Brighton. It just never really worked for him at Brighton,
Well,
did it?
I think the fact is the changes of manager at Brighton and then ended up Chelsea. It just was a mismatch. I think he was battered about for pillar to post probably with a change of management. It ended up it didn't work out for him.
Yeah, and I mean you're looking at a player there with a few loans. He was on loan at Norwich. I think he was on loan at Ibrox as well, was he not?
Yeah.
So he's had 2 or 3 loan spells which are outstanding. And it didn't really work out at Brighton for him either, So he's obviously moved on, went to Napoli, and Napoli must be sitting there going, "We've picked up McTominay for." Let's be honest. You bought. I know it's different players and everything else, Steve. You bought Solanke for 50 million quid, which is massively overpaid, or nearly 60 million, massively overpaid. Napoli have got the bargain of the season for getting Scott McTominay for less than 30 million. Mm-hmm. Tom, I'm sorry, mate, but it is. He should still be featuring that Manchester United midfield.
There's another one, isn't there? There's another one doing really well. Who's the other United guy doing really well? He was the one who wasn't in the side because he was up on some horrible assault charges.
Greenwood,
he's done well. Did he go to Spain as well?
He's at Marseille.
Marseille, sorry. I see reports that he's doing well at Marseille.
Oh, he scored 20 goals this season, but he was always going to do that. But that was United had their hands tied with that situation, really. But he was always going to score goals. He's probably the best natural finisher I've seen at United since Van Nistelrooy was there.
He's good.
Yeah. Decent player. Not very good when it comes to phone calls, but he's a decent player. That's for sure.
But no, I think if you spoke to any United fan, Cammy, I think they'd all say they didn't want McTominay to go. I think.
Yeah, I know. 100%.
I think it was the PSR stuff, and it comes back to what I said earlier about the club being so badly run off the pitch that we're having to sell our youth team players, or the players who've come out of the youth team, because they're 100% profit. Which Manchester United should never be in that position. Never.
Yeah, and watch for Manu next year going.
Well, exactly.
You've got the lad that's at Forest.
Well, this is why they're saying we're going to take 40 million for Rashford. Well, like you say, I know Rashford lost his way at United, but you see what he's done at Villa, and like some of the other fees that get talked about for players, the lad's still in the prime of his career. Compared to some of the money people are paying for other players, he's worth more than 40 million quid.
When you paid 90 for Anthony, and you're selling Rashford for 40, that just sums it up, in terms of. I thought Jim Ratcliffe, when he came into Manchester United, was going to do a job. But honestly, he's running that club into the ground, as we talked about earlier on. But listen, guys.
But I'd like.
Sorry, on you go, Tom. On you go.
No, I'd like nothing more than to see McTominay help Napoli lift the title. I wouldn't. Like I say, any Man U fan wants to see, and I think every Man U fan's enjoying the success he's having over there. And he's been a revelation. They love him, don't they? And let's him win and win the title.
And Dennis's favourite strikers banging the goals in at Napoli as well. Lukaku.
Yeah, you're not allowed to swear in this programme. Listen, Lukaku is not my style of play, right? And you could sing it all day long till the cows come in. He will miss more than he will create or score. And that, to me, he's like Maguire. It's a centre half at Man United. They don't fit the bill for me. Other people like them. That's fine. That's what we're on here for. It's just about opinion.
There'd be a lot of centre forwards would swap their record for his.
I know.
Yeah, and his transfer fee.
Right. Anyway, just looking at the results tonight, they're all nothing each. We have got.
Spurs have got to half time without conceding.
I was just going to say that, Steve. And then you look at Man United, who have just started. I think it's about 6 minutes gone. And Partick Thistle in the playoffs with Livingston, and it's still nothing each. Partick need 2 goals to get level with Livingston. So we'll see
I'm
how
going
that.
to go and watch the second half, see if
Yes.
Tottenham reserves can pick
Half
up
time.
a result.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on, guys. Appreciate it. And
Well,
I'll
thank
see you
you.
on Tuesday, Steve. And
Yeah, see you Tuesday. Yeah.
catch up with you during the week, Tom.
Yes, and I'll either speak to Steve or not speak to Steve on Thursday, depending on the,
Oh, I
on the
don't
result of
know.
Wednesday night.
I'll be more upbeat by then. We'll probably win the Europa League, keep Postecoglou, and win the league next year.
You never know. You never know.
Cheers, guys.
I was insane one, but never mind. Hey, guys, this has been the Friday Night Football Pitch. We'll probably get another couple of shows of the season to do. But listen, go ahead, like, subscribe. It does help us out a ton, as I say on there. Tell your friends, the more subscribers we get, there's every possibility we might be back next season. But as I say, on YouTube, on all good podcast hosting sites. But this has been the Friday Night Football Pitch. We've overrun slightly, but almost at 90 minutes. So it is time to say good night.